Welcome to the channel where we are translating the great script of Bhagavad Gita in simple and understandable language for everyone. We are also providing the background of the Shloka to provide context of why those words are spoken by the Lord Krishna. Have a great journey to decode the mystery of Bhagavad Gita.
अथ द्वितीयोऽध्यायः सांख्ययोगः। संजय उवाच तं तथा कृपयाविष्टम् अश्रुपूर्णाकुलेक्षणम् विषिदन्तमिदं वाक्यम् उवाच मधुसूदनः।
Translation: Sanjay said, seeing Arjun overwhelmed with pity, his mind grief-stricken, and his eyes full of tears, Shri Krishna spoke the following words. Explanation: to describe Arjun's feelings, Sanjay uses the word kipe, meaning pity or compassion. This compassion is of two kinds. One is the divine compassion that God and the saints feel toward the souls in the material realm on seeing their suffering in separation to God. The other is the material compassion that we feel upon seeing the bodily distress of others. Material compassion is a noble sentiment that is not perfectly directed. It is like being obsessed with the health of the car while the driver sitting within is famished for food. Arjun is experiencing this second kind of sentiment. He is overwhelmed with material pity toward his enemies gathered for battle. The fact that Arjun is overcome by grief and despair shows that he is himself in dire need of compassion. Therefore, the idea of his being merciful upon others is meaningless. In this verse, Shri Krishna is addressed as Madhusudan. He had slayed the demon Madhu, and hence gotten the name Madhusudan, or slayer of the Madhu demon. Here, he is about to slay the demon of doubt that has arisen in Arjun's mind and is preventing him from discharging his duty.
श्री भगवानुवाच कुतस्त्वाकश्मलमिदं विषमे समुपस्थितम् अनार्यजुष्टमस्वर्ग्यम् अकीर्तिकरमर्जुन।
Translation: The Supreme Lord said, My dear Arjun, how has this delusion overcome you in this hour of peril? It is not befitting an honorable person. It leads not to the higher abodes, but to disgrace. Explanation: The word Raya in our sacred books does not refer to any race or ethnic group. The Manu Smriti defines an Aryan as a highly evolved and cultured person. Aryan connotes goodness, like the term perfect gentleman. The aim of the Vedic scriptures is to induce humans to become Aryans in all respects. Shri Krishna finds Arjun's present condition in conflict with that ideal and so reprimands him by calling attention to his confusion in how to live up to this ideal state of being under the current circumstances. The Bhagavad Gita, or Song of God, effectively begins from here because Shri Krishna, who was quiet until now, starts speaking in this verse. The Supreme Lord first begins by inducing in Arjuna a hunger for knowledge. He does this by pointing out that his state of confusion is dishonorable and inappropriate for virtuous persons. He then goes on to remind Arjuna of the consequences of delusion, which are pain, infamy, failure in life, and degradation of the soul. Rather than comforting him, Shri Krishna is making Arjuna uncomfortable about his current state. We all feel uncomfortable when we are confused because it is not the natural condition of the soul. That feeling of discontentment, if properly channeled, can become a powerful impetus to search for true knowledge. The suitable resolution of doubt helps a person acquire a deeper understanding than before. Thus, God sometimes deliberately puts a person in turmoil, so that he or she may be forced to search for knowledge to remove the confusion. And when the doubt is finally resolved, that person reaches a higher level of understanding.
क्लैब्यम् आस्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यम् त्यक्तोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप.
Translation, O Parth, it does not befit you to yield to this unmanliness. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O vanquisher of enemies. Explanation, successfully treading the path of enlightenment requires high spirits and morale. One needs to be optimistic, enthusiastic, and energetic to overcome the negativities of the material mind, such as sloth, the rut of habit, ignorance, and attachment. Shri Krishna is a skillful teacher, and thus having reprimanded Arjuna, he now enhances Arjun's internal strength to tackle the situation by encouraging him. By addressing Arjuna as the son of Pritha, another name for Kunti, Shri Krishna invokes him to remember his mother Kunti. She had worshipped Indra, the chief of the celestial gods, and with his blessings Arjuna was born. Hence, he was endowed with extraordinary might and valor, similar to that of Indra. Shri Krishna is reminding him of this, encouraging him not to yield to this impotence, which does not befit his illustrious parentage. Again, he addresses Arjuna as Parantapa, or conqueror of enemies, indicating to him to vanquish the enemy that has arisen within him, namely, the desire for dereliction of his dutiful action as a Kshatriya, or warrior class prince. Shri Krishna goes on to explain that the way he is feeling is neither moral duty nor true compassion, rather, it is lamentation and delusion. It has its roots in weakness of mind. If his behavior was truly based on wisdom and mercy, then he would experience neither confusion nor grief.
अर्जुन उवाच कथं भीष्ममहं संख्ये द्रोणं च मधुसूदन इषुभिः प्रतियोत्स्यामि पूजाहार्वरिसूदन.
Translation, Arjun said, O Madhusudan, how can I shoot arrows in battle on men like Bhishma and Dronacharya, who are worthy of my worship, O destroyer of enemies? Explanation, in response to Shri Krishna's call for action, Arjun presents his confusion. He states that Bhishma and Dronacharya are worthy of his respect and adoration. Bhishma was the embodiment of chastity, and remained a lifelong celibate to fulfill the vow he had made to his father. Arjun's military preceptor, Dronacharya, was a genius in the science of warfare, and it was from him that Arjun mastered the art of archery. Kripacharya was another respectable person on the other side, whom Arjun had always held in veneration. To treat these men of high merit as enemies now seemed abominable to the noble-minded Arjun. If even arguing with these venerable elders was improper, then how could he ever think of attacking them with weapons? His statement thus implies, O Krishna, please do not doubt my courage. I am prepared to fight. But from the perspective of moral duty, my duty is to respect my teachers and to show compassion to the sons of Dhritarashtra.
Guru nahatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhaikshamapih loke hatvartha kamanstu guru niheva bhunjiya bhogan rudhirat pradigdhan.
Translation, it would be better to live in this world by begging, than to enjoy life by killing these noble elders, who are my teachers. If we kill them, the wealth and pleasures we enjoy will be tainted with blood. Explanation: it could be argued that Arjun needed to fight and win the kingdom to maintain his livelihood. But Arjun refutes that line of thought here. He says that he would prefer to live by begging than commit this heinous crime. He further believes that if he does indulge in this heinous act of fighting the war and kills his elders and relatives, his conscience will not allow him to enjoy any of the fruits of his action in this world, such as riches and power. Shakespeare's play Macbeth carries a telling example of a person not being able to enjoy even the natural state of sleep due to guilty conscience, let alone enjoy any wealth and power that comes along by immoral conduct. Macbeth was a nobleman of Scotland. Once while travelling, the King of Scotland came to rest the night at his house. Macbeth's wife incited him to murder the king and usurp his throne. Macbeth got swayed by her advice and assassinated the king, and thereafter he and Lady Macbeth were crowned as the King and Queen of Scotland. However, for years after that, Macbeth would be found walking in his palace, fully awake at night. The author writes, Macbeth hath killed sleep, and so Macbeth shall sleep no more. The queen would be found repeatedly washing her hands, as if to remove imaginary blood stains. In this verse, Arjun commiserates that, if he did kill these noble elders, tainted with their blood, his conscience would not let him enjoy all the royal benefits of ruling the kingdom.
न चैतद्विद्मः कतरन्नो गरीयो यद्वा जयेम यदि वा नो जयेयुः यानेव हत्वा न जिजीविषाम तेव स्थिता प्रमुखे धार्तराष्ट्राः.
Translation: we do not even know which result of this war is preferable for us, conquering them or being conquered by them. Even after killing them, we will not desire to live. Yet they have taken the side of the sons of Dhritarashtra, and now stand before us on the battlefield. Explanation: when evaluating the most suitable course of action, one considers various alternatives and their consequences. Arjun was debating whether it would be desirable to defeat the Kauravas or to be defeated by them. Both alternatives seemed like defeat, for if he did win the war by slaying the Kauravas, he would have no further desire to live. However, the fact was that Bhishma, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, etc. had acted ignobly by taking the side of the unrighteous Kauravas. The word arthak has been used for them, implying, attached to wealth and position, they had taken the side of the wicked Duryodhan. So, killing them in the war was a natural consequence. In fact, after the war, Bhishma himself admitted that a teacher who acts ignobly is fit to be abandoned. Here, special mention needs to be made of Bhishma. According to the Bhagavatam, verse 22 September 2019, he was a great devotee of Sri Krishna. He was a master of his senses, and an icon of chivalry and generosity. He was a knower of the absolute truth, and had vowed to always speak the truth in his life. Even death could only come to him when he chose to accept it. For various reasons, he is enumerated amongst the 12 great personalities, or Mahajans, mentioned in the Bhagavatam. These are the 12 great knowers of religious principles, the firstborn Brahma, sage Narad, Lord Shiv, the four Kumars, Bhagavan Kapil, son of Devahuti, Swayambhuva Manu, Prahlad Maharaj, Janak Maharaj, grandfather Bhishma, Bali Maharaj, Shukdev Muni, and Ved Vyas. Hence, Bhishma was an enlightened soul, whose actions could never be against the principles of Dharma. However, his profound character was beyond mundane reasoning. Even though he fought on the side of the Kauravas, he said to Yudhishthir, the eldest of the Pandav brothers, before the war, I am obliged to combat on the side of unrighteousness, but I give you the boon that you will be victorious. Bhishma knew that the righteous Pandavas, who had the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna on their side, could never lose. By taking the side of adharma, unrighteousness, he showed that even the biggest forces on heaven and earth could not make unholiness win in this holy war. He thus offered the biggest sacrifice of laying down his life to assist the divine pastimes of Lord Krishna. If I do not make the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna lift weapons, then I will shame my mother Ganga, and I am not the son of King Shantanu. Bhishma fought so valiantly that Arjun's chariot was shattered, and he was stranded on the ground. At that stage, Shri Krishna lifted the chariot wheel and came forward to prevent Bhishma from killing Arjun. Bhishma saw the Lord with the chariot wheel in his hand as a weapon and broke into a big smile. He understood that Bhaktavatsala Bhagwan, God who gives pleasure to his devotees, had broken his own vow to honor the vow of his devotee. In fact, Bhishma's devotion to Lord Krishna had a very rasik, full of sweetness, flavor to it. He used to meditate on Shri Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. There, in the evening when the Lord would return to the village after grazing the cows in the forest, the dust raised from the hooves of the cows would deck his charming face, increasing its beauty and sweetness. During the battle of Mahabharata, the dust raised from the hooves of the horses to added to Shri Krishna's beauty, and he loved having darshan, divine vision, of his Lord there. In the last stage of his life, as he lay for 6 months on the bed of arrows, he meditated on that very vision of God, offering the following prayer to him. On the battlefield, Lord Krishna's flowing hair was covered with white dust raised by the hooves of the horses, and his face was covered with sweat beads because of his physical effort in driving the chariot. These were like ornaments enhancing the beauty of my Lord, and the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows further intensified the decorations. Let my mind meditate unto that Shri Krishna. Lord Krishna reciprocated his loving devotion by himself coming to meet Bhishma on his deathbed of arrows, and with the darshan of God in front of him, Bhishma, the great Mahajan, left his body of his own volition.
कार्पण्यदोषोपहतः स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्मसम्मूढचेताः यच्छ्रेयस्यानिश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम्.
Translation: I am confused about my duty, and am besieged with anxiety and faint-heartedness. I am your disciple, and am surrendered to you. Please instruct me for certain what is best for me. Explanation: This is a great moment in the Bhagavad Gita, when for the first time Arjun, who is Shri Krishna's friend and cousin, requests him to be his guru. Arjun pleads to Shri Krishna that he has been overpowered by Kripayado, or the flaw of cowardice in behavior, and so he requests the Lord to become his guru and instruct him about the path of auspiciousness. All the Vedic scriptures declare in unison that it is through the medium of a spiritual master that we receive divine knowledge for our eternal welfare. To know the absolute truth, approach a guru who is both a knower of the scriptures and is practically situated on the platform of God realization. Seekers of the truth should surrender themselves to a spiritual master who has understood the conclusion of the scriptures and taken complete shelter of God, leaving aside all material considerations.
नहि प्रपश्यामि ममापुनध्याद् यच्छोकमुच्छोषणमिन्द्रियाणाम् अवाप्य भूमा वसपत्नमृद्धम् राज्यं सुराणामपि चाधिपत्यम्.
Translation: I can find no means of driving away this anguish that is drying up my senses. Even if I win a prosperous and unrivaled kingdom on the earth, or gain sovereignty like the celestial gods, I will be unable to dispel this grief. Explanation: when we are swamped in misery, the intellect keeps analyzing the cause of misery, and when it is able to think no further, then dejection sets in. Since Arjun's problems are looming bigger than his feeble intellectual abilities, his material knowledge is insufficient in saving him from the ocean of grief that he finds himself in. Having accepted Sri Krishna as his Guru, Arjun now pours out his heart to him to reveal his pitiable state. Arjun's situation is not unique. This is invariably the situation we sometimes find ourselves in as we go through the journey of life. We want happiness, but we experience misery. We desire knowledge, but are unable to lift the cloud of ignorance. We crave perfect love, but repeatedly meet with disappointment. Our college degrees, acquired knowledge, and mundane scholarships do not provide solutions to these perplexities of life. We need divine knowledge to solve the puzzle of life. That treasure chest of divine knowledge is opened when we find a true Guru, one who is situated in transcendence, provided we have the humility to learn from him. Such is the path Arjun has decided to take.
Sanjaya Uvacha Eva Muktva Hrishikesham Gudakesha Parantapa Nayotsya iti Govindam Uktva Tushnim Babhuvaha.
Translation: Sanjay said, having thus spoken, Gudkesh, that chastiser of enemies, addressed Hrishikesh, Govind, I shall not fight, and became silent. Explanation: the sagacious Sanjay, in his narration to Dhritarashtra, uses very apt names for the personalities he refers to. Here Arjun is called Guke, or conqueror of sleep. The power of sleep is such that sooner or later, all living beings succumb to it. But with his determination, Arjun had disciplined himself in such a way that sleep would come to him only when he permitted it, and only for the amount of time he chose. By using the name Guke for Arjun, Sanjay is subtly hinting to Dhritarashtra, just as this hero amongst men conquered sleep, so too will he conquer his despondency. And the word he uses for Sri Krishna is Heke, or master of the mind and senses. The subtle hint here is that he who is the master of his senses will definitely ensure that the events are properly managed.
Tamovacha Hrishikeshaha Prahasanniva Bharata Senayorubhayor Madhye Vishidantamidam Vachaha.
Translation: O Dhritarashtra, thereafter, in the midst of both the armies, Sri Krishna smilingly spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjun. Explanation: in sharp contrast to Arjun's words of lamentation, Sri Krishna smiled, displaying that the situation was not making him despair, rather he was perfectly happy with it. Such is the equanimous attitude exhibited by someone with knowledge in all situations. With our incomplete understanding, we find faults with the situations we are in, we complain and grumble about them, wish to run away from them, and hold them responsible for our misery. But the enlightened souls inform us that the world created by God is perfect in every way, and both good and bad situations come to us for a divine purpose. They are all arranged for our spiritual evolution, to push us upward in our journey toward perfection. Those who understand this secret are never disturbed in difficult circumstances, facing them with serenity and tranquility. The snowflakes fall slowly to the ground, each flake in its proper place is a famous Taoist expression. It beautifully expresses the inherent perfection in the design of the world and the macro events taking place in it, even though we are not able to perceive it from our material perspective.
श्रीभगवानुवाच अशोच्यानन्वशोचत्वम् प्रज्ञावादांश्च भाषसे गतासु न गतांसूंश्च नानुशोचन्ति पंडिताः.
Translation: The Supreme Lord said, "While you speak words of wisdom, you are mourning for that which is not worthy of grief. The wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead." Explanation: Starting with this verse, Shri Krishna initiates his discourse with a dramatic opening statement. Arjun is lamenting for what he feels are very valid reasons. But rather than commiserating with him, Shri Krishna takes the wind out of his arguments. He says, "Arjun, though you may feel you are speaking words of wisdom, you are actually speaking and acting out of ignorance. No possible reason justifies lamentation. The Pandits, those who are wise, never lament, neither for the living nor for the dead. Hence the grief you visualize in killing your relatives is illusory, and it proves that you are not a Pandit." One does not need to go far into the Gita to find a wise person above lamentation, for Grandsire Bhishma himself was the perfect example. He was a sage who had fathomed the mysteries of life and death, and risen above the dualities of circumstances. Serene in any eventuality, he had even consented to taking the side of the wicked if it served the Lord. He thus demonstrated that those who are surrendered to God simply do their duty in all situations, without being affected by outcomes. Such persons never lament because they accept all circumstances as God's grace.
न त्वेवाहं जातु नासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपाः न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम्.
Translation: Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Explanation: On the gate of the temple of Apollo at Delphi are inscribed the words, "Know Thesutan," or "Know thyself, V8. Even Socrates, the wise old man of Athens, was fond of encouraging people to inquire into the nature of the self. A local legend goes like this. Once, Socrates was walking on the street, absorbed in deep philosophic contemplation, when he accidentally bumped into someone. That man blurted in annoyance, "Can't you see where you walk? Who are you?" Socrates answered with amusement, "My dear fellow, I have been pondering over that question for the last 40 years. If you ever come to know who I am, please let me know." In the Vedic tradition, whenever divine knowledge is imparted, it usually begins with knowledge of the self. Shri Krishna follows the same approach in the Bhagavad Gita, with a piece of information that would have swept Socrates off his feet. Shri Krishna begins by explaining that the entity that we call the self is really the soul, not the material body, and is eternal, just as God himself is eternal. Creation is a combination of three entities: God, soul, and Maya, and all the three entities are eternal. If we believe the soul is eternal, then it follows logically that there is life after death of the material body. Shri Krishna talks about this in the next verse.